What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing part 2 of the best $200 phones to check out. Be sure to check out part 1. I'll have that in the description as well. So let's go ahead and get started. This was requested by quite a few people. The first phone that I would look at, guys, is the Galaxy S22. You can actually find this in excellent condition, and I'll put a screenshot up for $224 on Amazon right now. These typically go for around $230 to $250. So I think this is an excellent phone, and it's pretty well rounded, especially for the price that you get. So the design still pretty much looks like, just a regular S24 without the cutout, right? You also do have the aluminum frame. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and it feels really great in the hand. Very comfortable to hold for people who are into one-handed use and stuff like that. I think this is pretty comfortable, and it's kind of compact enough. Now, you do have on here a 6.1-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus. It gets up to 1300 nits peak brightness. So the display is very vibrant. It's a flat display. Very nice thin bezels on here. Very vibrant colors. And yeah, it's 1080p 425 for the PPI. And it's just a excellent panel. I really don't have any complaints with this panel. I think it's bright enough in direct sunlight. Now, this phone, it did get the Android 14 update. It is going to get Android 15 as well too. So you get 4 major OS updates with this phone, and then you get security patches. So what's cool about this phone is it got the Galaxy AI features as well too. So you get to enjoy a lot of the AI features on this phone, and it just feels pretty much identical to a Galaxy S24 software wise. So you got the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 on here. Now the 8 Gen 1 is a very good processor for just doing regular stuff. Even gaming on this phone is fine. You can play PUBG at really good settings. It's just that this phone can get a little bit warmer than I would like. And it just depends on how heavy of a user you are. If you're not like a crazy gamer or something like that, if you're not really into it, then I would say this processor is perfectly fine. You're not really going to have any issues with it. But if you are, you'll notice that it does heat up a little bit. You got 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on here. And yeah, performance is fine if you're just a lighter user. You really won't notice any issues with this processor at all. Now, you do have on here pretty good speakers as well. The speakers sound really crystal clear. You got decent bass on here. You also got the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor on this guy as well too. Now, the best thing about the S22 is actually the cameras. You have very good cameras on here for this price point, a 50 megapixel standard with a 10 megapixel telephoto, that 3 times optical with a 12 megapixel ultra wide. You also can shoot an AK-24 with a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. These take excellent shots. That's why I always say consider an old flagship over like a normal, budget phone or a mid-ranger, because these are awesome photos. You get AK-24 video, and it does a really good job. I think the low light could be a little bit better on the S22 series these days, but everything else, if you're in like good lighting, medium lighting, you still get a really good shot with the S22. It's very impressive. Now, this phone has a 3700 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt charging with wireless and reverse wireless charging. The issue with the S22 is because the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is really not that efficient. Battery life is not that great on this phone. I would say for a lighter user, you can get somewhere around 5 hours of screen on time, which again is not that great. I consider a full day to be like 6 hours of screen on time. But like I said, if you're a lighter user, the battery life is just okay. I wouldn't say this is good or great battery life at all. But besides that, I mean, this is an excellent buy for, $224. Next is the Galaxy S20 Ultra. So this is a fantastic phone, and I think a lot of people overseas will really like this phone as well. I think it's a little cheaper than something like a Galaxy S22. So this phone you can again find for around 250 bucks, and also cheaper on eBay. So that's why I say always, check around. But awesome phone. It's a big phone, so it's aluminum frame, IP68 dust and water resistant, extremely comfortable to hold. It doesn't have the boxy design like a a Galaxy S22 or a Note phone or something like that. So very comfortable to hold, even though it's a bigger phone. It's a 6.9-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It is 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1400 nits for the peak brightness. So again, it's pretty bright display. It's 1440p 511 for the PPI. The only thing about this display is that it cannot run 120 Hz in 1440p. You have to run it in 1080p, which is fine. so I don't have a big issue with that. But the display is very nice. It's a very big phone. So if you want something that you're gonna watch a lot of content on, you like big phones, then this is definitely great, especially on a budget. So you also have on here, this phone got its last update, Android 13, One UI 5.1, but I really wouldn't say that it feels outdated. You can still use all your applications. It's still currently getting security patches as well too. It's the Snapdragon 865 is extremely efficient here in this late 2024 going into 2025. We can still play PUBG at really good settings. Performance is actually really good. You really don't have overheating problems with this phone. I've never had an issue with a chip on this phone. In addition, for people who really need the SD card support, it is here on the S20 Ultra. You got 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM on the base model. So again, this is for people who want an older flagship, you want the SD card support. This phone is a great option. It's big and it's actually pretty comfortable to hold. So you also do have the pretty good speakers on this phone as well too. And design wise, it still looks pretty good. I think this is one of Samsung's most bland designs. I think if you get the black version, it looks a lot better. But yeah, so this phone also, you got the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor on here as well too. Now the cameras on this phone are still okay. You can definitely tell it's an older flagship, especially when you get it in low light. In good lighting, I think it still can take a very good shot. It's 108 megapixel standard. You got the 48 megapixel periscope zoom. It got the 4x optical and the 10x hybrid. This was the first phone to do the 100x zoom from Samsung. And then you also got the 0.3 depth sensor. It can shoot an 8K 24 with a 40 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. So like I said, you can still get a good shot out of this phone. But like I said, the selfie camera is a little bit soft, and also just low light shots in general aren't that great on here. And like the zoom is a little bit shaky. So again, you can tell this was Samsung's first kind of like, with the crazy zoom stuff. But overall, you can see the photos from, yourself. These are still pretty good shots. So this phone actually has very, very good battery life. I did a battery drain test if you guys want to check that out. It was just did an amazing job. It's got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 45 watt charging. You can easily get through a full day with this phone. It's got a 15 watt wireless and reverse wireless charging. So this phone is also excellent on battery life as well too. All right, so next is the Moto G Stylus 5G. This is one of my favorite phones I've used this year. And it's amazing for people who, you might not want something that's come from the used refurbished marketplace. You want something brand new. I did an unboxing of this. I got the Walmart prepaid version. That's $200. It is a little bit more expensive if you get the unlocked version. I think it's around like $300. But I really like this phone. If you guys are on like prepaid networks and stuff like that, definitely check this phone out. So this phone has I really like the back of this phone on here. It's a plastic back, but it has a nice kind of like, leather kind of experience on here. And then it's got a plastic frame, so it's not a premium design, but it doesn't feel cheap and it's very well made. You also don't have any official IP rating on here. It only has a water repellent design, so you can't really get this phone wet. Now you do have the built-in stylus on here, which you could do navigate the phones. Motorola has some also features that you could take advantage of as well too, so something that I really like. And the screen on here is very nice. It's a POLED display, 120 hertz, and then it also goes up to 1200 nits peak brightness, which is decent. You also do have a 6.7 inch display. It's 1080p 395. Overall, it's a very good display. I really didn't have any issues with it. Very vibrant colors, respectable bezels on here. Now, this phone, it launched with Android 14. It will get Android 15, but after that, it only will get security patches. So that's one of the, downsides with this phone. So, you just have to come up with, do you care about the major OS updates? But the phone will be secure for a few years, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, what's really impressive is the Snapdragon 6 8 Gen 1. This was a very efficient chipset. It was able to play PUBG really well, and overall the phone was just pretty fast. So that was the most thing that I was impressed with. Very efficient chipset, and this phone also has SD card support. So you can expand the storage on here. It's 128 gigs of internal storage, 8 gigs of RAM. So again, for my SD card people, you might really like this phone for that. The fingerprint scanner is fast enough. I didn't have an issue with it. And the speakers are also pretty decent on this phone. And to top it off, you do have a headphone jack on this phone. So for everybody who likes the headphone jack SD card combo, you have that on this phone. And you also have pretty good camera. It has a 50 megapixel main and then a 13 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 1080p. It goes up to 120 frames. 32 megapixel selfie, shoots in 1080 60. Pretty decent camera settings again for a mid-range phone. But like I said, the cameras are fine if you're just going in, taking a still, recording some video. It does a pretty decent job. It's not amazing. It's not going to be the best camera on this list at all, but you can get a good shot. You can see the photos from here. Battery life is also very good on here. 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 30-watt charging, wireless charging as well. So like I said, this phone is featured packed. Definitely check it out. Another phone that has flown below the radar is the OnePlus 10T. You can legit find these right now on Amazon for like 200 bucks. And I really like the phone, and it kind of like flew below the radar actually. So this phone has a plastic frame, glass back, so it's not fully premium, but it doesn't look cheap and it doesn't feel cheap at all. But this phone has no official IP rating, so do note that. Now you do have a 6.7-inch Fluid AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1080p 394 for the PPI. So overall, the display was perfectly fine on here. Everything looked really solid, so I didn't have an issue with that. Now this phone, it is running Oxygen OS, and you do have the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 on here, and the phone was pretty fast. I didn't have an issue. I could play PUBG at pretty good settings as well too. Didn't really have any type of performance problems at all. I personally like Oxygen OS. I think it's pretty fluid and fast, especially the updated version. But you have 128 gigs and 8 gigs of RAM on the base model, and this phone does have pretty decent stereo speakers as well too. You have a pretty decent fingerprint scanner. It's an optical one, but that works fine. And then also the cameras on here, like I said, I thought they were solid cameras. Definitely, not the best cameras, but it's a 15 megapixel standard with a 8 megapixel ultra wide. It does have a 2 megapixel macro. It can shoot in 4K 60 with a 16 megapixel selfie that shoots in only 1080 30. That was the only thing I didn't like, is not being able to shoot in 1080 60 for the selfie. But as you can see from these still images, the 10T can give you a pretty good shot. So I didn't really have an issue with that. The battery life was also really good on this phone at 4,800 milliamps. Now, what I absolutely love about this phone is that you do have 150 watt wired charging on here, which I know is crazy. And I think it's 125 watts for 110V sockets, but that's still amazing, right? This thing charges up crazy fast. So you don't have wireless charging, but honestly, it charges so fast that you don't really need it. But I was just really impressed by that. And OnePlus also gives you like the chargers in the box and stuff like that. Just wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, I really like this phone for the charging speeds, and overall it's a solid option if you're a OnePlus fan. All right, so last is the Pixel 6 Pro. For anyone who wants to take pictures, this phone still has the best camera for taking stills. It is easily the best camera for taking stills. Absolutely love this phone. Again, easily find these around like 240 bucks. It's got the aluminum frame, it's got the glass back, it's IP68, dust and water resistant. Overall, it has that classic Pixel look. And then we also have an LTPO AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 6.7 inches, 1440p, 512 for the PPI. Very nice display. Had no issues with the panel. Very nice, vibrant colors, very smooth. This phone got its last majorOS update with Android 14. It is currently getting security patches as well too, so the phone will be secure for, I believe, for a few years actually. And it's got the original Google Tensor chip. So with the Android 14 update, this phone is nowhere near as buggy when it first came out. It's very fast, extremely smooth, like really fluid still. And I have no issues with this phone if you are just a lighter to normal user. If you're a gamer, I really wouldn't go for this phone because it's not as well optimized. It's not as powerful as a S20 Ultra or a S22. So this, like, PUBG just doesn't run that great on here. Well, it runs fine, but it's not going to give you that the settings that you would get on an S22 or S20. So just note that this is not really geared towards gamers. It's 128 gigs and 12 gigs of RAM on here. The speakers are very nice on here, really good bass, great speakers. Fingerprint scanner is okay. It's an optical one. It gets the job done. But these cameras are what you're buying the phone for. If you're on a budget and you want the best cameras, this is the phone to buy. 50 megapixel standard, 48 megapixel periscope telephoto, 4x optical zoom with a 12 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 4K 60 for the main camera, and then a 11.1 ultra wide selfie that shoots in 4K 30. Awesome shots on here. Still takes pretty good low light shots, excellent daytime, excellent skin tones, this phone will still give you a really good shot, especially for this price point. You can't beat it. So it's got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 23-watt charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging. My only issue with this phone is battery life is not that great. It's okay on the Pixel. I give it like a C plus, and standby time is really not that great either. But besides that, battery life like is decent on here. But yeah, so that is pretty much it. Be sure to let me know what you guys think. Which phone would you put on this list? And I'll catch you guys in the next one.